Hello. Thank you everyone for joining me. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and you're here with me at No Soundbites Allowed. That's right, your favorite program on your podcasts, talking about everything that's affecting you in your culture, in our culture, in the country, from the federal to the local level. And today I have some really special things going on. One of the things that I really am happy to bring up is I have in with us two guests. I have Michael Woodward, who is the SUNY Broome Republicans president for that club. And at the same time, I also have online on the phone with us, Dawn Scheffler, who's going to be talking with us about a really special event coming out of SUNY Broome as well. And that is the Pancakes for Puerto Rico. It's a wonderful, wonderful cause. And I'm happy to be able to present this to everyone. Dawn, say hi.
Hi. Hello. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, great. And Mike?
Hello.
So we're going to take a moment. So let me start off first. Some of you who listen to the program may be familiar with Mike Woodward. He's been with me. He's my co-host on the SUNY Broome Republicans podcast, which will be launching on its own site very shortly. But Dawn, for those who aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about you and the organization you represent.
Well, I am also a student at SUNY Broome, and I am currently this year the student vice president of the National Society of Leadership and Success. The National Society of Leadership and Success is I guess you would kind of call it a pre-professional society on campus, where we are an honor society, but not the traditional honor society. We're more focused on leadership abilities and developing communication skills than we are on necessarily just your GPA.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm glad that you're able to do that, because it's not just about GPAs, it's about life, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Dawn.
No, I was just going to say that in many cases, honor societies on campus, like you get in on your GPA and then people are like, okay, we're done. And in our society, it's more about putting in the daily effort. And in the long run, that is what's going to take you both make your higher GPA and, take you a little bit further too.
I've noticed that myself with just the S&T meetings, which I think is an absolutely wonderful idea.
Oh, yes. For the people who are not NSLS, the S&Ts are our success networking teams, where we put students into small individual groups and they have to choose a goal to work towards. And they actually have to report back to the other students on their success. So it kind of helps you learn to not just, budget your time and work towards the goal, but how to give productive feedback to other students as well.
I would totally agree with that. I know in my S&T meetings, I think that the other students I've been with, two of them in particular were 2 chapters behind, and now they're completely caught up, and they've been so thrilled to be able to report to that they had a little bit of oomph in order to do that from someone else other than themselves.
Sounds like some great programs. It really does.
Absolutely.
So, Don, let's talk a little bit about Puerto Rico. It's something that it sounds like you've been very involved with.
Well, I think Puerto Rico was in all of our minds because you couldn't help but care when you saw the devastation that happened. It was on September 20th, which was only a little more than a month ago. It's hard to believe. Hurricane Maria actually ran right through the country or right through Puerto Rico, and it took out 80% of their agricultural industry entirely, and their power system was completely shut down. They've made some progress in putting it back up, but the thing that you have to understand, even if you can get the power plants working, the actual ability to get the power from the plant to the homes and the schools and the hospitals, all that infrastructure was just completely destroyed. So especially in rural parts of the area, there are people who still do not have power because they just can't get it to those homes and schools in the more rural parts of the country. And it also hundreds of thousands of people without running water, and the sewage treatment plants, of course, were shut down too because the infrastructure was collapsed. And those two things together, causes disease to breed like wildfire through the country.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
the
yeah,
amount of people
so-
who've died on a daily basis has skyrocketed. I have family out there, so I know and so do many of my friends, and it's been a very, very difficult time.
Yeah, and the thing is, I don't even think we will ever actually know how many people died because of this hurricane, because you can't just take into account the people who, died in the actual action of the storm, but also from the hospitals that were shut down, and the lack of running water and medicine getting through. And so I don't think we'll ever actually know the death toll that it took.
No, the collateral damage is you can never really know what that is. But the great thing is that we can do things to try and help at least minimize that, or going forward to reduce that and help them get back to normal, which is what it sounds like your event's supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. I mean, there are a number of different organizations that work on the ground in Puerto Rico, and in our own small way, trying to help raise money to help their efforts. And that's what Pancakes for Puerto Rico is all about. All of the proceeds are going to hurricane relief efforts in Puerto Rico. Everyone who is working the event is completely volunteer. We're not keeping any of the profits. It's all of the money we raise is going to Puerto Rico. And, besides that, it's going to be a very fun event. It's going to be a pancake breakfast. Our society volunteers will actually be making the pancakes.
Right there?
Yeah.
On location.
Right there on location. So, you know who to complain to if it's no good.
Yeah, it'll be me.
Yeah, that would be Michael.
Yeah, probably.
You're so sweet, Don.
Oh, well, Don, there's something really important I want to ask about this. When is it?
It is Sunday, November 19th. So it's the Sunday after this coming Sunday. And it is going to be at the American Legion Post 80, which is on 76 Main Street in Binghamton. It's kind of the more historic American Legion Post. And it's going to be from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., 12 noon. And adults are $10 to get in. Children are $5 to get in. That is, children from 4 to 12 years of age are $5 to get in. We're not going to make you pay for children 3 and under. They can get in for free.
Well, it's always a good thing. And I know that's pretty good. And I know Post 80, actually, it's about a block away from where I live. For people who aren't familiar with Binghamton and the area, that's right off of Main Street. If you happen to be if you're driving down Main Street to go towards downtown and you see a CVS, you've passed it. Back up. And if you're going the other way towards Johnson City off of Main Street and you happen to pass the gas station or the Horizons Federal Credit Union, you've passed it. Back up. So that'll give people a little bit of a frame of reference of what they're going to see right around it.
So, hey, you have no excuse for not being there if you live that closely.
Absolutely.
I'm very involved. I'm very involved with being ex-military and all. I'm very involved with the Post 80 and all of the veteran events. In fact, today's the Marine Corps birthday, and I should be out celebrating. But I'd rather talk about this with you because I think it's just as important as my fellow comrades. And this is what we did when we volunteered to serve. The purpose was to protect lives and save lives, and that's what this is. So it's kind of an extension of the same thing, I think.
Absolutely. And, Puerto Rico is not a state, but every person born there is an American citizen. So
yes, we
if
are.
Nothing else, if nothing else, come by and help out your fellow Americans.
I always do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it sounds great. Who came up with this idea?
It was a joint effort. It actually kind of started as a joke. I was sitting with our president of the NSLS, and we were talking about other hurricane relief efforts, and we were actually too late in the game to help out with any of those. So I said jokingly to him, we should have our own and call it Pancakes for Puerto Rico. And then we both got home that day and night and said, wow, we really should actually do that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I mean, it's unique, it's different, it's something that everyone can get involved with. It's not too expensive.
Yes, and that's actually why we had it at the American Post 80 because they were very nice to us in their pricing, because we wanted to make it so that everyone who wanted to, do their part and give could afford it, and it's also just a nice way for families to come out on Sunday and spend some time together. We're hoping to have some music playing, and it'll just be a lot of fun.
Definitely. How many volunteers do you have?
So far we have about 16, which
Very cool.
I think we can pull it off with that many. But hey, if anybody would like to volunteer, get a hold. We have a Facebook page. It's called the NSLS at SUNY Broome, and if you search us on Facebook, you'll find us, and just send us a message and say you'd like to volunteer.
Well, let's make sure we heard that right. You said that is the N as in November, L as in Lima. Go on. S as in Sierra.
NSLS.
Sorry, hold on. It's NSLS. We missed an S.
Yes.
See, I knew there was something wrong.
Yeah. I was confused for a moment. We missed an S.
That's all right. If I miss it, then other people missed it too.
Yes, it's the NSLS, SUNY Broome chapter.
Perfect. And they can find that on Facebook as well as on Google?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Is there a phone number that someone could call?
Actually, your best bet is just to call my number, which is area code 607-761-5744. I'll say it again. Area code 607-761-5744. And just ask for Dawn, or send me a text if you can, and just tell me you'd like to volunteer. We're always open for more volunteers.
Absolutely. And I hope that this will help to get some more volunteers, as well as just bring people out to enjoy the event and, donate their money and have a great time. I think both are, if we can get both, all the better.
And hey, if we're also taking cash donations. If you would like to put in a little bit more than your $10 ticket, that's always welcome as well. That money will also go completely to hurricane relief. So, every dollar you give to us is going to them to help them out.
Oh, it's fantastic. So are and I should ask Mike, for the SUNY Broome Republicans, are they going to be coming into that as well?
There could possibly be a donation. Okay. I haven't been able to talk to anybody to see if they really want to volunteer or not. I mean, there's a couple of them that are going to be busy studying, supposedly.
I'm sure they will. You're all students. I'm sure it's about that time for midterms and such.
Right.
And actually, that's another great thing to mention. This is happening right around midterms. So thank you. Thank you very much, Dawn, for being able to put this together at a time that's, pretty stressful for most students. And I think it's a nice way for... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I shouldn't be taking all the credit there. It's, we do work as a team. I have a very dedicated board of executive members of our organization that we all chip in and pull the weight.
Oh, I didn't want it to sound like I wasn't thanking all of them.
No, I understand.
I just happened to be on the phone with you.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. Today was my first board meeting, and it was very nice, a great group of people.
Well, you're on the board too.
Yes.
So as a member of the board, I think, as one of the representatives of the board, I thank you, Mike, as well. Who else? You can give a shout out to the other boards or the clubs that they're in. Please give them some credit.
Well, our right alongside me, our student president, Anthony Sweet, he's actually the one in charge of the food, the actual getting of the food, and he's also going to be the one yelling at the people making pancakes in the kitchen. So really, a lot of this project has been him and me, as a team, and he deserves a lot of the credit.
Fantastic.
Our secretary, Nicole
by the way.
Inc., we would not. Yes, Anthony is a great guy, and our secretary, Nicole Inc., we couldn't make things work without her, because she keeps all the day-to-day business of the NSLS, setting up these S&T meetings we were just talking about going. And we just have a very great group of people working on our e-board, and our advisor, Jason Boring, and his secretary, Sandy, she's fantastic. We do not know what we would do without her.
Well, great. And I'm glad that we can bring in
All great people.
Yeah, I'm glad to mention all their names. They all deserve good credit for what they're doing. It's a great cause. By the way, we're almost out of time. Segment's gone over a little bit, but that's okay because it's important. But I did want to ask one question. I'm sure some people out there are wondering. Are there going to be pancakes with like chocolate chips or blueberries or strawberries?
That is the mysterious question everybody wants to know from Anthony. And he is, from the twinkle in his eye, I'm thinking he's going to be throwing some of those in.
So it's the big secret to draw people in, huh?
Yeah, because he hasn't given us an exact answer. You are actually the second person to ask me that today. He has yet to give us an exact answer. But I have a feeling, yes, although he might want a little something from you to go to Puerto Rico extra.
You know,
little.
Exactly. That's it. Sell it. Sell it. You want blueberries? We got blueberries. That's an extra $1.
Yeah, I think that's his thinking. I think you and Anthony would get along quite well.
Probably. Hey, it's all for charity, so it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Well, Dawn, I want to thank you, and Mike Woodard, I want to thank you as well, from the SUNY Broome Republicans, from the NSLS, from SUNY Broome, and all the students involved, Anthony Sweet, the chairman, Jason Boring, and everybody else who's involved in this. I thank you all for doing it. It's something that's going to help my family over in Puerto Rico and friends of my family and friends and everybody in America. It helps us all. So we do thank you for that. And we're looking forward to it that's again, November 19th from 8 a.m. until 12 noon at the Post 80 in Binghamton, New York.
Yes, and thank you very much for letting me be on your show to talk about this. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And we'll have you on again in the future, talk about more things as they happen. Absolutely. And we'll be right back with our next segment at No Soundbites Allowed. This is the Dragon of the Southern Tier, Michael Voss. We'll be right back. Hello, and thank you for coming back to No Soundbites Allowed. This is your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. And I'm glad that you're back with me again. We had a great first segment there, that we were talking with Dawn and the NSLS and their promotion of the Pancakes for Puerto Rico. I think this is going to be a great charity event. Please do spread the word about that, because I think it is important to help the people of Puerto Rico and to just help people in general. It's a great thing coming from SUNY Broome and the students there, and we're happy to help support that. And please spread the word. In addition, don't forget, there's also, and you'll see this at the SUNY Broome Republicans podcast, which will be coming out shortly, you're going to see that there's also a Toys for Tots. I don't want to spoil it. Please go to that episode, and you'll hear that podcast, and they'll talk about that event, and I think you'll find it also quite interesting. And speaking of Toys for Tots, this is a well-known program from the Marine Corps, and it's done every year. It's to give toys to kids. But I want to take a moment to also talk about the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps, well, it's their birthday. It's the Marine Corps birthday, 242 years old. That's right. The Marine Corps is 1 year older than the entire country, which is fantastic. And as a Marine, I want to say to all of my fellow brothers and sisters across the world, I hope that the Marine Corps birthday and Veterans Day and every day finds you safe and secure and far from harm. And for those who are on the front lines, those who are in harm's way, I thank you sincerely and deeply, because it is because of your protection, is because of your actions that I'm able to be on this podcast, to be able to put out my views and to speak openly and publicly about what I think. It is because of our military and the Second Amendment as well that allow us to have the First Amendment and every other right that we have in this nation. And if it were not for their actions, we could not do this. Our nation would not be nearly as free, nor would it be as strong. And we are a strong nation, we are a proud nation, and we are a free nation. And that's probably why most nations around the world are upset. And that's why we have millions of people every year trying to get into our country. And that's why we see so many illegal aliens staying in our country. It's not just because of the money. The money, the economics of it, is a byproduct of the first thing, which is freedom. Because we have freedom, we are able to have economic growth and prosperity. That's why our quality of life is so high. All of that comes from the fact that we have men and women in the Marine Corps and all the armed services that are around the world protecting our goals, our ideals, and promoting our democracy, our democratic republic, and making sure that people know you just can't barn stomp on America. You can't restrict our freedoms, neither in the country nor outside, and that we will stand tall against all opposition, because freedom is worth it. So again, I thank all of my brothers and sisters in the Marine Corps on the Marine Corps birthday, and all veterans and everyone in active service and those who have served before, and most especially those who have bled for our nation. I thank you. I thank you sincerely and deeply, because it's your actions that make everything else possible. And I acknowledge that, I understand that, and I thank you for it. But one of the other things that I wanted to go into today is obviously the fact that this is post-election in Binghamton and across the nation, and several elections were decided. In particular, I want to talk about what happened in the mayoral race, what happened in the county clerk race, because those are two very important races. In the fact that what we saw with the county race, well, let me start with the mayoral. Tariq Abdelazine, the Citizen Action candidate, lost, which was expected. The thing that's scary about that, though, is he lost with about 40%, 39-40% of the vote. And that's a bit scary. It's scary because Mr. Abdelazine represents the fringe, the far left, the radical far left. Let me make it very clear. I see it, there's a very big difference between Democrats, progressives, and the far left. They're not the same thing. They're all in the same party. They're all considered Democrats, but they're not the same thing. John Kennedy, as an example, was a Democrat. And today, he wouldn't even be considered a Democrat. He would be considered a Republican. Just like Martin Luther King would be considered a conservative, not a Democrat. They're the core. They are, let's call them the ideal Democrats, blue dog Democrats. And what we see is that most of the party in the Broome County, they're not. Or at least that's the impression they're putting out, that the southern tier, that Broome County is actually a hotbed of the far left and progressives. And that would fall into progressive leaders of tomorrow, Plot, which is a branch and splinter of Antifa and Black Lives Matters, which are themselves splinters and parts of Citizen Action. So they're all connected. They're all the same people. Let me speak for the southern tier in Broome County. The leadership in Citizen Action and Black Lives Matter, to my knowledge, Antifa and Plot, they're all the same people. They're all the same group. They're the same leadership directing people to various amounts of public admission They're the same people doing everything. So if you're looking at one, you're looking at the other. They all have the same mission and goal. And I have to say that mission and goal, from what I've been able to hear at one of their events, is racism. When you're telling people that it's okay to destroy property based on the color of skin of the owner of that property. And when you're saying that when people, white people, go out and clean their neighborhood, that they're racist because of that, you are a racist. I don't care if they're black. I don't care if they're white. I don't care what they are. If you're telling me that because a white woman or a white man goes out into his neighborhood and cleans the garbage that has been put there, that they are racist, that's their motivation? No, they're not the racist. The person issuing that statement is, and that was Black Lives Matter. And that was Citizen Action. So, yes, it's troubling when I see that Tariq Abdel-Azim gets about 40% of the vote. Roughly 25% of the vote are zombie voters. And let me be clear, this isn't an insult, it's a fact. Zombie voters exist on all party lines, and they are people who just vote partisan straight down the line. That means they vote nothing but Democrat. They vote nothing but Republican. They vote nothing but conservative or independent, whichever party it is, libertarians, whatever. That they only vote for anyone in that party. So you could literally put up a sock puppet and say it's a Democrat, and they will vote the sock puppet in because it's a Democrat. It's on the Democratic line, and they vote nothing but Democrat. They don't care. Now, when you say that, that's kind of troubling. That's terrifying to me, actually. And it scares me. It scares me a lot because zombie voters would literally vote in a sock puppet. I mean, there's no other way of saying that. I mean, how is that not terrifying to anyone and everyone? That's 25% of the vote that Tariq Abdel-Azim got, regardless of the fact that he supports racists and those racists support him. That's Black Lives Matter. And that was spoken about publicly. So I'm not afraid of saying that that's what he said. And the fact that he's got one face that he put on during whenever the cameras were on and he was promoting himself in Facebook and through all the media. And then if you actually spoke to him outside of that, still publicly, but when the cameras weren't on or he felt that they weren't on, his reaction to those who disagree, who are willing to say, I don't think that's the best idea, really showed his true character. And this is what Citizen Action is about. There's the face that they try and put out when the cameras are on and when the media is around. And then when the cameras go away, then they really start to show their true colors. And they tell people about things. Go to their meetings. I've been to them. I can't go again because I've actually spoken out about what they have said, so they won't let me in again. But what they did say when they let me in is they were racist and that their ideals aren't for the betterment of the community. It's the betterment of their goals. They're there for one simple reason, to advance their specific goals above and beyond anything else. And if anything else, benefits along the way, fantastic. But otherwise, they don't care. They're going to put their agenda first. Not the people, not the welfare of the good of everyone, not the public, not at all. It's their progressive agenda. So it scares me when I see that he got 40% of the vote because 25% of the voters in the Democratic line in the southern tier are zombie voters. And they would put in a sock puppet. And that's proven as well because when you look at what happened with Dan Livingston, who was another Citizen Action candidate who was running for county clerk. And in his race, we saw that the day before, on November 6th, he came out and he had put out a postcard that he had sent out to voters. Now, when he sent this out, he did not identify his name on it. He didn't identify who it was sent by. He just sent it out. It was a postcard, which was illegal. It violated election law. It was nasty. It was mudslinging. It was one of the dirtiest actions in the election and in several elections for a while because it was completely inflammatory, untrue, hearsay, made up, and it didn't matter. He just put it out there anyway without putting his name on it, which has to make you stop. Kind of like with BLM when they said, please leave, and the media, news media, don't write about this. They're hiding from the public. Well, Dan Livingston, again, did the same thing. Again, they're all on the same page, same wavelength. He put out a postcard that was illegal, that was rumors and innuendo and didn't put his name on it. Again, they don't want to be caught. They want to do things. They just don't want to be caught for it. They don't want the repercussions or the consequences of their actions to be attributed to them. And so what he did is he sent out this postcard. It was illegal. People got it. There was some backlash from the media saying, hey, who did this? This is illegal. How can you do that the day before an election, trying to sway an election? Then Dan Livingston came out and said, no, I did it. It was my postcard. I sent it out because, well, my race isn't going that well. And I thought, this is the best way to get people's attention. Really? By breaking the law? By breaking the law and putting out false information, you think that's going to help you win? Well, it did help him to get over 40%, which is kind of sad, but he still lost. And I have to say, that's troubling. So we have Tariq Abdelazim with the zombie voters. At least 25% of the vote was also the zombies that voted for Dan Livingston, who broke the law. Again, this is why I say, if you put a sock puppet out and you allow zombie voters and say, hey, this is your party affiliation, they would vote for them. The man broke the law and admitted it the day before an election, and he still was getting votes. How can you do that? How is that possible? Why would anyone allow that? How could anyone, if I were a Democrat, I would be very upset right now. I know I am because I'm not a Democrat. I'm upset that someone could break election law the day before an election and still be considered a candidate. That person should have lost hands down, should not have had any votes. That isn't the case. What happened is Dan Livingston actually had a competitive race. Isn't that scary? Isn't that terrifying? This is one of the consequences we see of the election. We've clearly identified that in the southern tier, we have a percentage, 25% of all the voters out there, of the Democratic voters, that will vote a sock puppet in as long as they were in the Democratic Party, because they go straight down the line, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter beyond that. That's a terrifying thought, and that's a terrifying message to put across the entire state. But it's not the only thing. There's another consequence that leads to. And this is why it's important for us to not only vote, but to know who and what we're voting for. Because someone committing a crime the day before an election has to put some question in your mind. What would they do if they got in power? If they're willing to lie and break the law before they get power, what would they do with power? But I'm going to come back because there's another consequence about this, and we'll be back right after the break, and I'll tell you about the other consequence, which will affect us in 2018. Be right back. Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back for the final segment in this episode of No Soundbites Allowed. I am Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, your host for this program, and we've been talking about a lot of things that are of interest. We're talking about how to help Puerto Rico and the hurricane victims there, and that's a wonderful sentiment and a great action by the students over at SUNY Broome, and we're looking forward to seeing that. We're going to be there on November 19th from 8 a.m. till 12. Please come down and join us at Post 80 in Binghamton, New York. So that's going to be fantastic. And then we went on to talk about, well, also the Marine Corps birthday. Happy birthday, Marines. I'm happy for that. And as well, for those who will be listening to this on Veterans Day, I want to celebrate all of the veterans in our nation, all of them from every war and every service. Thank you, because without you, I couldn't be doing this today. None of us could. And we have to acknowledge them and thank them for that. I also was talking about the election, and that's where I'm going to pick up from, because there are consequences for everything. And we did see that Citizen Action lost, and all of its, actually, the Democratic Party lost in the southern tier in 10 of 11 races, which was pretty devastating. Across the board, it's a message, it's a statement that the people reject the Democratic, and more importantly, at this point in the southern tier, if not across the nation, the progressive movement within the Democratic Party, which is actually pretty much taken over the Democratic Party. As I mentioned before, today's Democrats, the core leadership of the Democratic Party, aren't Democrats. They're progressives. They're not the same thing. The progressives, at least in the southern tier region, we're talking about Citizen Action, are racist. We're talking about Black Lives Matter. We're talking about Antifa. We're talking about Plot, or otherwise known as the Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. These are not splinter groups. It's just, for some reason, progressives like to use a lot of different names of organizations to promote their ideas. So depending on who they're targeting, they have this group, BLM, or they have Antifa, they have Veterans Against War, and other groups that they just have these splinter groups to target whatever group they want to talk to promote their ideas, because it's all about their ideas. And ultimately, it's the same leadership in every one of these organizations, all going towards the same goal. And they don't care what they have to do that. Black Lives Matter is willing to use racism to be able to get its political agenda going forward. We saw, and I discussed that both in an episode and just in the last segment. Also, we see that, Dan Livingston is willing to commit crimes, which Citizen Action, the Democrats in the area, did not denounce. He should have instantly been denounced and rejected by the entire party for violating election law the day before the election, and to use rumors and innuendo that are unfounded to try and gain votes. But that didn't happen. It should have happened. Because of credibility alone, the party should have said, that is wrong. You can't do that. You can't lie to the public just to get votes. You can't do that. But they didn't. They supported him all the way down the line. Now, thank goodness he lost. But what's the consequence of this? What's the consequence of zombie voters that we were talking about? And they are in all parties, given. But in the Broome County, because of this election, what is the message we have sent out to the state and to the rest of the country? That there's at least 25% of the population that are zombie voters for the Democratic line that will vote Democrat and put in a sock puppet. The second thing that we're saying is there's so much power within the fringe, the far left, the progressives, the Citizen Action, and its various other names, that if you want to be a Democrat and run, you have to appeal to these individuals. You must promote them. And I know this for a fact because let's see what happened in the New York 22nd race, which will be in 2018. It's already started, and the candidates are already known, most of them. We know that Claudia Tenney, who is the congresswoman, she is running again as the Republican. We know that Anthony Brindisi, who's an assemblyman from Utica, that he is running as a Democrat. We know that two Democratic candidates, Heath Phillips and also Madden, Dr. Madden from the Southern Tier, were both pushed out of the race. Well, you could say intimidated, pushed out. There's a lot of ways of saying it. But essentially, they were rejected by the Democratic Party in favor of Anthony Brindisi to run. And we know that there may be another candidate or two. Yes, I mean you, Martin Babinick. There's a few others that I've heard about. But looking at this, what did Anthony Brindisi do? He's the assemblyman for the 119th up in the north part of the New York 22nd district. It's 2.5 hours away. And he came down to Binghamton to make his announcement that he was running. He surrounded himself with Citizen Action. As soon as he was done with his press release for the public, he went to a protest with Citizen Action. And after that protest with Citizen Action, he then went over to an event that they had previously invited the media to at United Methodist Church, which happens to be where Citizen Action starts most of its protests from. And they march around disrupting the public and businesses. But separate of that, they went there to the church to make a speech, Anthony Brindisi did, and initially tried to stop the media from being able to cover the event even though they were invited to the event. And it was a public event, which is kind of scary. And again, it goes back to the progressives. They don't want the public to know what they're doing. They have a public face, they have a media face that they put out there, and then there's their conversations they like to have when they know the media isn't around and when no one is reporting. Then they have a very real conversation. And that's when we get to find out things like they promote racism. That's what I found. That has been my experience and what I've heard. But this means that Anthony Brindisi has identified, and that would mean the state Democrats have identified the Southern Tier in Broome County as a progressive stronghold. If you want to run for Congress as a Democrat, the very first people you have to come to in Binghamton are the far left. You have to go to the radicals in BLM and Antifa and Citizen Action to be able to get any traction in the Southern Tier. That is terrifying. We have been identified and isolated as radicals. And there are more Democrats in the Southern Tier and Broome County and Binghamton than there are Republicans. The district, the New York 22nd District, is Republican by 6 points. But in the city, just like in Utica, this is a Democratic stronghold. And they identified those Democrats, the people who are going to be influential, who will make or break a candidate's race, as progressives, radicals. The people who are willing to protest and disrupt the community and harm the community. They're looking to find the backing of people who will violate and break laws because winning is more important than following the law or anything else. That's what that says. Because Anthony Brindisi didn't denounce Dan Livingston for breaking the law. He didn't even talk about it. He let it go. The Democratic Party of Broome County didn't denounce Dan Livingston for his action. They let it go. There was no outcry saying you can't vote for him because this is a criminal act and we can't allow people to be criminal and elected. No, they didn't say that. No, instead, what they did is they let it go because that's what they expected. That's what they were looking for. That's who they were electing. They were electing a progressive, and that progressive had an agenda. And that agenda means that is more important than the laws or the people. That's the message I hear. That's the message that's going out across the state. It's okay. This was a progressive. Of course he broke the law. Of course he was willing to do anything. Of course Tariq Abdelazim supports racists, and those racists support him because they're progressives. They're Citizen Action. We have to expect that. And they're in control of the Democrats anyway. And that's how you win. Politicians are very, very specific. Okay? I've run in a race. I've covered races since before 2010 intensely. And, in 8 counties across New York at the lower levels. I've followed races. I know people everywhere in every party. And I can tell you, candidates rarely go off on their own. They don't just do something just because they think, ooh, this is a neat thing. I'll just go and do that. No, races, elections are calculated. Where you show up, who you speak with, when you're getting in the media to let the media know, there's a calculation to all of that. You know, which event am I going to go to? Do I go to the picnic or do I go to the parade where the media is going to be because I want to be elected? That's just the reality of politics today. Media exposure is a big thing. How you can get your message out to the largest group of people is a thing. Good or bad, every party does it. There is no party that doesn't do it, and there is no candidate who doesn't take that calculation in mind. So when you are getting support or you're trying to gain favor with this group or that group, you have to say to yourself, what is the best group to initially go after? Who's going to have the biggest bang for the buck and actually can also raise the biggest bucks? Who are we going after? And that's going to be a decision, and that tells you who are the leadership, who are the most important people in that area. Or at least the impression of it. So when Anthony Brindisi came down to the Southern Tier, his calculation and his staff and the state Democratic Party said, you need to go to the radicals. You need to go to the far left because that's what's going to be Binghamton. That will bring you in the votes. Really, people, think about that. That's a troubling thought. That's terrifying. We need to change that. And I'm not saying don't be a progressive. I'm not. And I'm not saying don't vote for progressives if that's what you believe in. I am saying, though, that the perceptions we're putting out there don't seem to match the people. And I say that, look at the results. Look at the results in 2017. 10 out of 11 races were won by Republicans in the supposed progressive stronghold where they have the superior numbers. They lost repeatedly. Even with 25% built in, instantly, 1/4 of the vote was automatically theirs because of zombie voters who just vote partisan, straight down the line Democrat. Instantly, they know they're looking for 50%. They're halfway there. Day one. As soon as it's time for an election in 2018, they automatically are starting with, every single Democrat starting with 25%. And then they can go higher or lower from there, but they start with 25% because of zombie voters. You have to say to yourself, wait a minute, this is terrifying. This isn't what politics is about. We're not zombies, and we shouldn't vote as zombies. And we shouldn't allow fringe groups to usurp the power and lead a direction that the rest of voters don't want. Democrats didn't vote for Tariq. Democrats didn't vote for Dan Livingston. They didn't vote for citizen action across the county. They rejected them. Citizen Action had had the majority of the candidates out there, and Citizen Action has the individuals running for, Anthony Brindisi running for congressional seat, that they're coming to Citizen Action, not the Democratic Party, to Citizen Action, because that's the impression of who runs things. Think about that. The extremists, the radicals, people willing to break laws and call and actively promote racism. This is what they believe is the Southern Tier. And they're willing to commit money and resources and risk elections to align themselves with criminals, people who will break election law and lie to the public and promote racism. How can you not be terrified by that? But with that being said, and I probably beat it to death on this, but I thank you for listening to me. This has been Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, spouting a little bit of fire. I thank you for joining me today. I hope all Marines across the nation have had a wonderful day. I hope all veterans will have a great day. And I look forward to seeing you at our next episode of No Soundbites Allowed. Thank you.